I love when coaches, consultants, and professional service providers want to do big things in their business. They want to rise to the top and influence their market and the world around them. They want to have a greater impact and make a more lucrative income. Well, if this is you, welcome to Expert in You podcast, the show where I interview other experts and coaches, consultants, so that they can share their success strategies with you. We're going to talk about marketing and how to close more sales, how to get more premium clients, and how to really build your visibility in the market and scale your business like a boss. If this is you, welcome to the show. I want to ask you to subscribe and hit the notification bell right now so you don't miss one episode. Grab your coffee and buckle up because we are ready to give it all to you to help you become the expert and get paid as the expert that you are. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Expert in You podcast. I'm your host, Ann Carden. And this week, oh my gosh, number one, I'm so honored to have Craig Andrews with me on my show, but he is going to inspire you beyond inspiration. That probably doesn't make sense, but he has such a story and he is just doing some amazing, brilliant things out there with businesses. And I just can't wait for him to dive in and share with you. So Craig, thank you so much for being on my show. I'm so excited to have you here.
And I've been looking forward to this. So excited to be here. Been looking forward to this conversation for a while.
Awesome. Well, he is the founder and CEO of Allies for Me, 4 being the number. And I know you're probably wondering what that is. So before we really dive into what Craig does, he has a story that we have to talk about because it really has brought him into what he is doing today. Is that right, Craig?
It's definitely contributed, and It was kind of an awakening revelation to some really key things.
Well, go ahead and jump into that and tell your story. This is going to be so valuable for people to hear, just all the gold that's going to be in this story. So go ahead.
So August 10th of 2021, I walked into the emergency room at the hospital, walked up to the desk and said, I'm having trouble breathing. And they immediately took me back, put me behind a curtain. My wife had parked the car, and I hear her on the other side of the curtain saying, "Where's my husband? Where's my husband?" And they said, "You can't go back. You have to leave." This was back during COVID, and they weren't laying family in the hospital. And so they admitted me, and about 11 days later, they shot my arm full of morphine, which is kind of a strange thing to put in somebody who's having problems breathing, but that's what they did. And a few hours after that, they called my wife in the middle of the night and said, "We want to put your husband on the ventilator." And she heard me screaming in the background, "No ventilator, no ventilator." And she said, "Well, he doesn't want to be on the ventilator." And the doc laughed at her and said, "Well, if he doesn't, he's going to be dead in 24 hours. And she said, "Well, how many people have you had survive the ventilator?" And he said, "None. Nobody has survived. This was the Delta variant of COVID. And if you went on the ventilator, you died." As a matter of fact, I was the very, very first one to leave the ICU alive. And I've checked, very few people followed me that way. And so what happened was I was in a coma for about 6 weeks. And and my wife, she said, "Well, if he's going to die, he's not going to die alone. I'm going to come visit him." And they said, "No, you can't." And no, we have pictures. She's in the hospital visiting me. She prevailed. And thank goodness she did, because I honestly don't think I would be here today if it wasn't for what she said to me, she did for me while I was in my coma. Because for an hour a day, she would come into my room. That's all they gave her was 1 hour. Mm-hmm. She would come into my room and she would sing to me and she'd pray over me. She'd say words of encouragement and she'd touch my body. She made sure, she touched. Mm-hmm. And it was lights out for me for 6 weeks. And when I woke up, something amazing happened. My trust in the doctors plummeted. It fell through the floor. I didn't trust them at all. And at the same time, my trust in my wife had just kind of gone through the roof. Mm-hmm. And so the doctors would come and say, hey, we want to do such and such to you. And now my brain was really scrambled then. And the only thing I knew was I didn't trust the doctors. So I kept telling the doctors no. And so they had to go to my wife and say, hey, we want to do this. And some of the things they were asking were immensely sensible, looking at it now with a clear head. But they had to go through her, and she would come to me and she'd say, the doctors want to do this. And I'd ask her, is it safe? And she'd say, yeah. And I was like, okay. And about a week and a half after that, I started realizing what I believed about reality was not true. I'd had a series of dreams. My dreams were my reality. Mm-hmm. And I'd said a couple things, watch people respond, and I realized what they believe about the world is different from what I believe about the world. And so one day I called my wife over to the side of the bed and I said, hey, I'm going to, and by the way, when I woke up, I could wiggle fingers and toes. I couldn't lift an arm, couldn't lift a leg, certainly couldn't walk, couldn't sit up in bed. And I called her over to the side of the bed and I said, I'm going to tell you some things and I need you to tell me if these really happened. And she said, okay. And the first thing I asked her, I said, have we been in Louisiana? She kind of laughed. She said, no, been here in Texas. And I started to tell her a story about going to a resort in Louisiana to convalesce. And at one point, they wanted me to leave, and they were getting angry because I couldn't leave. And I kept telling them, I can't move. You're going to have to carry me out. And they finally called my wife in, and she came and she touched me on the left shoulder and said, Craig, this is Karen. I'm your wife. It's going to be okay. And when I told Karen that, she kind of sat back. She said, Craig, I said that when you were in your coma. I said those exact words.
Mm. They say people can hear when they're in a coma. They say that, but how do you know that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's been really interesting. It wasn't fun at the time, but it's been really interesting. I've gone through her journal. She journaled on Caring Bridge as a way of updating friends and family. Mm-hmm. And I'm able to pinpoint specific dreams to specific dates in her journal. And it's interesting. What was going on in my world was a lot different from what was going on in reality, but it was a reflection of reality. And so, for instance, there was one time I had a feeding tube through my nose. For many days, I had a feeding tube through my nose. And one of my dreams, I was being drug uphill with a cable going through my nose. Oh. And again, not all the dreams were fun, but that was the day I went in for surgery, and they moved my feeding tube from my nose to what they call a peg tube, which goes in through your stomach. Mm-hmm. And so the way it registered in my head was, and there was a lot to that dream. I still remember my dreams very vividly because it was my reality. But on that day, there was a cable going through my nose. Mm. But, there's something really interesting where this kind of ties back to business. And this is kind of the insight that you were alluding to earlier. Maya Angelou has a quote that people love, and it goes that people will forget what you said, they will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel.
Yes.
And so in 6 weeks, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I just said so true. That's such a truthful quote. Yes.
Yeah. And it makes sense when you hear it. You're like, yeah, because we all remember how people made us feel. Some made us, and in my case, the doctors, when they thought I couldn't hear, spoke death and despair. Mm-hmm. My wife, when she was uncertain if I could hear, spoke life and hope.
So powerful.
Yeah. And so it in a very short time, it flipped the trust equation. And it wasn't that I distrusted my wife before, but I definitely put a lot more trust in the doctors than I did before. And when I woke up, I didn't know much. I was operating from instinct. It was a survival instinct. And
right.
A lot of my dreams, we'd have to spend hours. If I were to decode, tell you some of my dreams, you would see the constant thread in my dreams was I was stuck and I was trying to get unstuck. And so I was just fighting for survival. And when I woke up, all I knew was, don't trust the doctors. Don't trust them. They're not looking out for your good. And it's a shame. It's a horrible, horrible shame. That's the impression they left on my subconscious. But, it hit me as I started decoding things. And, I took the rest of the year off. I got out of the hospital. I was in the hospital 3 months, learned how to walk. Yeah. I had to learn how to walk again. I walked for the first time. So I went in the hospital August 10th. I walked for the first time October 27th. And that wasn't very far, and it wasn't very gracious. But I took the rest of the year off, and I just started putting things in place. And I thought, for a few years, we had been doing this thing called a first time offer. We work exclusively with high ticket clients, coaches, consultants, and what have you. And the challenge they have is getting somebody to say yes to their high ticket offer. And so we introduced something it's kind of like a coffee date that is a small mini project. And it hit me. I was like, oh, I knew it had been working for years. It kind of changed our fortunes in the business, but it hit me. I was like, it's because of that, one of the reasons, and there's many, one of the reasons is because of that Maya Angelou quote. When you come along somebody and help them solve a problem in their life, mm-hmm. It builds trust. It builds mountains of trust. And so when you go from that to your high ticket offer, it's a much easier yes for them. You're now the insider. You're the trusted insider, and everybody else, they look scary and dangerous because they're unknown.
Right. So how did you turn that into what you're doing today? Because you actually work with companies, a lot of companies and organizations. And even, did I hear you say SaaS companies or different types of businesses?
Yeah, we haven't worked with SaaS. I think it would depend upon the SaaS model. So many SaaS companies are, their funnel is, hey, sign up for, here's a free sample of our product, and moving up. I don't know if we would add a ton of value or unique insight to that, to that model, but somebody else that has, because there are people. I was talking to a buddy of mine the other day, and his company, a license of their software is, I don't know what the current pricing is. I know it used to be like $40,000 per person per year. Mm-hmm. And so when you're selling something like that, a high ticket thing, there is no free version of that. Right. That's a place where we could conceivably help somebody with SaaS. Would be the higher ticket ones.
Right. So talk about what it is you help them do. You first time offers, but you talked about basically it's about getting people to trust you for something much bigger. So how have you applied that strategy? Which that's a strategy we hear all over online, right? Give them something free or sell them something at a low ticket and then send them up into something bigger. But you've really kind of reconstructed that model to a degree, and you're doing it at a much higher level with bigger businesses and bigger companies. So do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. And guess what? I tried some of those other things, the free and the something small. I think, some of the terms out there are a tripwire or an entry.
Right. Yes.
And those completely failed for me. So this goes back, I started working on this in 2017, and my first time offer completely failed. My second one also failed. The third one failed, but a little bit less. And it took like 18 months before it started working. And then, for like 5 years, we've been refining it. Mm-hmm. And wait a minute. I want to just hit on that before you continue. Did you hear what he said? 18 months, and they've been doing it 5 years, and they're still refining. That is mic drop right there, because most people think everything should be now and everything should just work instantly and work
immediately and it should work like, I mean, and that's not the reality, is it? Not the reality at all.
No. And it's funny. Anytime where I feel like, okay, we've reached perfection, it only takes me a few months before I realize, oh no, we should be doing this.
Yes.
We should be doing this. And it's funny when I was in a meeting yesterday with somebody, and we lay out candidly. I mean, we don't hide the formula. We've published the formula, and we tell people, and I kid you not, in the same meeting with people, I will tell them something. And usually the thing I tell them is it has to solve a problem.
Mm-hmm.
It must solve a problem. If it doesn't solve a problem, you're not going to build the trust. And I said that in a meeting yesterday with somebody. And sure enough, before the meeting was over, they said, well, maybe we could do this for a first-time offer. And my question to them was, what problem does that solve? And they're like, yeah. And, and it's funny. It's the small, it's the small things that I get, after struggling with it for so many years and embracing a lot of this stuff seems obvious. And so I have to slow down and realize, I have to take myself back to 2017 when I started this and realize, okay, most of the people I'm meeting are kind of back there. But it's really interesting. Well, let me throw out two examples that will show the difference between what many people are familiar with as a tripwire versus what we would call a complex offer.
Right.
And so like when I was growing up, when albums were popular the first time, I'm seeing they're making a comeback, which is kind of cool.
They are. I didn't even know that. Okay.
Yeah, there's a Barnes and Noble around the corner from me. We walk by there. We never go in. I don't know how they stay in business, but we walk by, and no kidding, you can buy albums at Barnes and Noble now.
I did not even know that. They can't sound as good as digital, though.
Well, I have some audiophile friends, and there's, they always talk about the warmth, the warm sound. And so they're making a comeback. But when they were popular the first time, Columbia House Records had this deal where you could get 13 albums for a penny.
Yes, I did that deal. I took that deal. Why not?
Yeah. Well, it's great because if you're the type of person that's trying to build a record collection, for one penny, they will get you 13 steps closer to your goal. And so I would describe that as a simple offer. And my first-time offer that failed was a simple offer, as was the second one. The simple offers work for simple products or services. So here's another offer. We didn't do this, but I think everyone can relate to it. There was a guy named Bob Stupak who bought some dumpy old hotel at the end of the Vegas Strip. And he renamed it Bob Stupak's Vegas World. And he ran a special, and it went like this. Give me $396, and I will give you 3 days and 2 nights in one of my deluxe suites. When you arrive, there will be a bottle of champagne waiting for you in the room. While you're on the property, all of your drinks are free, whether you're gambling or not. Even if you're sitting in one of our entertainment lounges, you will pay nothing more for your drinks. Not only that, but for your $396, you will get $600 of chips to use in my casino. So if you look at that offer, there's 4 deliverables. The room rate was a discount off the published rate. There was a free bottle of champagne. There was free drinks and free money. And I love that offer as an example because it does 2 things, or 1 thing or 2 things, however you want to divide it, very, very well. It draws in his ideal customers while also repelling his non-ideal customers. Mm-hmm. So if you're the type of person I'm sorry?
Explain that. Yes. Yeah.
So if you're the type of person that likes to drink and gamble, you look at that and you're like, wow, that's hard to turn down. That's a really easy thing to say yes to. And as a matter of fact, it's hard to say no to. Now, if you're like me, I'm not against drinking. I'm not against gambling. It's not something I do. I drink. I have wine, but I doubt they're going to be serving the kind of wine that that would make that a bargain for me. And so, I look at that offer. I'm like, I think I'll stay somewhere else, which is really good for Bob Stupak. By the way, the hotel is now called the Strat. It used to be the Stratosphere. So if you've been to Vegas and you've seen that, that's the hotel we're talking about. But Bob Stupak knew that he would make the most amount of money if his hotel was filled with guests that like to drink and gamble. And so he didn't want me staying in his hotel because I would go in there, I would take up the room, but I wouldn't go down to the casino and gamble. And so he's not making as much money off me. And so that repels me, so he can sell that room to somebody that's going to be more profitable for him. And what we find is the best first-time offers attract your ideal clients while also repelling your non-ideal clients.
100%. Yes.
And, so kind of going back to the whole notion of a complex offer. So if you're a coach or a consultant, chances are your service is complex. If you're charging more than, let's say, a fitness coach, so if you're charging, 4, 5, 6 figures to coach or consult, chances are what you're selling is complex. The other reality is, and I'm sure you know this, is your customers don't fully understand how much they need you. You know that they have needs that they have yet to realize.
Right.
And the challenge in the sales conversation, because I've tried this, trust me, my way of working is I try everything that doesn't work until I figure out what does work. And so I've tried going into prospecting meetings and saying, well, here, let me tell you the ways that you're screwed up. And guess what? I can fix it. Those didn't work for me.
No, that doesn't work well.
And the beauty of the first time offer, and like I said, the meeting I was having yesterday was with somebody. It was the delivery meeting for, at the conclusion of our first time offer, which was a mini project. And they said, oh my goodness, your little method worked on me, because they realized some problems that they had that they didn't realize at the beginning of it. And I never had to point them out. It was in the delivery where we had some guided discussions where they came to those realizations on their own. Mm-hmm. I knew those problems were there in advance. They didn't know, but it's a much better way. I mean, if your customer, if your prospect can come to the conclusion on their own that they have a big problem that nobody else has revealed to them, that you've helped them understand, not because you pointed a finger in their face, but because you asked kind and considerate questions.
Yes.
That got them to the point of realizing that you're a valuable person in their life.
Yes. 100%. Oh my gosh. First of all, you and I, again, do some of the same things. So we have the same philosophies for sure. I love how you have brought this to the business sector, but I want to hit on that because it really is. I always say, you used guided conversations, and I actually love that term. I have never used that terminology before. I always say you want to lead them and you want to lead and uncover the problems with the questions. We're saying the same thing basically, but you want to lead them and influence them to want to buy. So they're asking you basically, how can we buy? How can we work together? How can we do this? That is a much better place to come from in a sales meeting than to sit there and try to push your stuff on people.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other angle of it is we also find out the people that we're not a good match for.
Yes.
And I'm sure you see this. You run into some people that you very, very quickly determine are not teachable.
Yes. 100%. Yes.
And sometimes that comes out in the sales conversation. Sometimes it doesn't. But what I found is when we're going through the first time offer mini project, it almost always comes out. We've had a couple slip through that, and we've had to go back and say, okay, what did we miss in our process? But by and large, it just transformed the quality of clients that we get. And which, if you're a coach or a consultant, any minute you're spending thinking negative thoughts or working through something because your client just shot you an angry email, that's lost productivity. I don't know, I've seen times in my life where a client sends me an angry email that's not very accurate, not very thought out, just seems mean.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me 5 minutes to read the email and 4 hours to get over it. And those are 4 hours where I'm not doing productive work that's helping somebody's company or helping myself.
Yes. So good. That's such a, really, you're talking about a great mindset hack. Right there is, don't spend time and energy on things, address what you need to address, but don't spend time and energy on things that are going to drag you down and really suck your energy. That's a valuable statement that you just made there, because so often, and I've been guilty of this too, I'm so committed to my clients and to the results that they get. And I want to do the very best that I can for them. But sometimes in doing that, we have to check our own emotions, because if their business becomes so emotional for me, I can't focus on helping all of my other clients, and I can't even show up to be the best for them. And I certainly can't help my own business being in that state of mind. So I like that you brought that up. I think that's really, really important.
Yeah. And we liken it to a coffee date. And if you think about how coffee dates work, you go on the coffee date because you hope it leads to bigger, greater things.
Mm-hmm.
But not every coffee date ends that way. Sometimes you end the coffee date and you look at them, you say, you know what, you're a wonderful person, but I don't think we're wonderful together.
Yes. Yes. And you have to be okay with that, for sure.
Yeah.
And I love too how you're talking about really attracting and repelling, because I also talk about that a lot. It's so important when we are so aligned with the people that we're working with. Not only does it make our life more enjoyable, it makes them and what the process more enjoyable for them, but it also really lightens that burden and that load, and you can just do what you do best. When you are drugged down by somebody that's not coachable, somebody that's consistently throwing up resistance, someone that you feel like you're just constantly having to expend energy to, that makes it really hard as a business owner to be able to really, I think, show up the best that you can be. And I think it hurts results all the way around. So I'm so about being aligned with the people that you're working with. It will help with success.
Yeah. And the more you incorporate your values into your filter, mm-hmm. and we believe the first time offers a filter. I mean, it's a few things. It does a number of things. But one of the things it does is it's a filter. And when you can incorporate your values into that filter, all of a sudden you start pulling out people that have your values. And guess what? When somebody shares your values and they make a misstep, you're a lot more forgiving of them.
Right.
Which is back to the whole mindset thing. The person I was meeting with yesterday, they are, but for me, one of my pain points, if you lock me in a room with an indecisive person, I think before long, the police are going to end up having to be called, and, bad things will have happened. It's a very bad place for me. I don't handle indecision well. And the person I was meeting with yesterday is probably the most decisive person I've met in years. And, it's funny, we'll say, well, hey, do you want to do something? So the meeting that we had yesterday, originally we were proposing it to be like, tomorrow or the day after. And they said, could we have it earlier in the week? Because we really need to get going. And that just filled my heart with joy, mm-hmm. because I'm like, oh my goodness, I love this person, because
yes,
they see the problem. They're like, let's not screw around. Let's go get about fixing it. And that just speaks to my personality.
Those are our dream clients, right? Let's get on it.
Yeah.
I love that. So good. There's been so much value and so much gold in everything you have talked about. and including your story, and just so many takeaways here that I know people are just going to get massive value from this, Craig. I can't thank you enough for being here, being open and sharing that story. You even, one of the things people don't know is Craig showed me a picture of him when he was in the hospital when we did like our pre-call for this podcast. And oh my gosh, it was heartbreaking. Like, but I look at him now, I was looking at the person that I was doing the pre-call with, and I was looking at this picture he was showing me, and they were not even remotely the same person, except they were, but they weren't. It was so inspirational, and just how far you have come. But I also love how you use that experience to make you better, to do better things and bigger things. And I think that's such an important thing for people too. Sometimes they go the opposite direction when hard things come, right? And you didn't. You used that to really catapult you into new levels. And I think that's so powerful.
Well, it's, without a doubt, it's one of the hardest things I've ever been through in life. Learning how to walk as an adult is hard. Being so dependent on others, and I'm a very, very independent person. That was one of the hardest things, was for months having to be dependent upon others. I mean, not to get too graphic, but when I was learning how to go to the bathroom again, which is another skill I had to learn, the second time I did that, in somewhat of a normal way, I had to have somebody pull my shorts up for me when I was done because I couldn't do that. So it's been incredibly hard, but it's by far one of the most valuable things that's ever happened to me.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Such a good conversation with you, Craig. Thank you. You have been just so open and honest and transparent about everything. And to me, those make the best conversations and the best shows. And they let people really see inside of other people that are doing big things, but to see, hey, the journey just isn't always roses. It's just not, right? Let's think about the iceberg. I mean, is that the most valuable graphic out there, in my opinion, right? The iceberg and what's underneath. And it is all those things underneath, but you can either use that and you can let it refine you, or you can let it define you. And I think you're letting it refine you. And I think that is so much more valuable to people to see that, and for you as well. So this has been great. So I know you have a giveaway for my audience, so I'm super excited for you to share that with them as well. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, as you mentioned earlier, 18 months to get the first time offer working. So I don't think I've made every mistake, but I've made most of the mistakes in doing this. And so I put together a guide so others can avoid some of the mistakes I've made. We also have a self-paced course. And so if you go to our website, which is alliesforme.com, that's spelled ALLIES, the number 4, ME.com, and then just add a /expert in you, all lowercase, all one word. That will take you, there's a little form, just fill that out and you'll get the guide and you'll get 23 days access to our course.
Oh, nice.
Let me explain the 23 days. We're not trying to be stingy there. We actually, we study human behavior. And I'm sure you have signed up for a free course and never logged into it. It's sitting in some dusty shelf somewhere, being unused, not changing your life. I have. I mean, everybody does this.
Right. Or I've logged in and I was in there for a short time and then I never went back.
Right.
Guilty of that. Right.
So we put the 23-day limit on there because we see it in the analytics. When we do that, people actually go in and use it. And our goal is to change people's lives. So if you go to alliesforme.com/expert in you and sign up, you'll get the guide. You'll get 23 days access. You'll get a few emails from me. If you have any, and they come directly from me. And so if you have any questions, just fire back. We'd love to answer those questions.
Perfect. Well, thank you, first of all, for sharing that with my audience. And again, thank you, Craig, for being here and sharing your expertise and even going deeper and sharing more than your expertise. So I appreciate you so much. This has been fun.
And this has been a delight. Thank you for having me.
You are absolutely welcome. And everyone, please reach out to Craig, grab his, oh gosh, what a wonderful gift. Grab his free gift. And if I can help you in your business also, you know where to find me. And until next time, you have an amazing day and go rock your business. God bless you. Until next week. Bye-bye.
If you've enjoyed this episode, I want to invite you to go check out a free training that I have at expertinu.us. It is a training that I have on how you can get ultra premium dream clients, scale your business, get more freedom, and really simplify your business and multiply your money. So go check that out. And again, that is expertinu.us. I want to thank you for being here with me this week. I hope you found massive value. Please always leave a comment, feedback, or a question. We check them all. And I want you to go rock your business and make sure you join us again next week. God bless you. Have an amazing day. Bye-bye.